Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your practice. I have a couple of points to make before we get going here. I put an update on the threefoldlotus.com website at threefoldlotus.com/home/home HTM. Home.htm, I should say. It's just been on my mind that once again, while we're talking about the Lankavatara, as has been repeated over years of videos here, this discussion about energy and the Nidana, especially well covered by Julius Evola in his book on the Doctrine of Awakening. Great book, an older book, but really good analysis of the Nidana. And what occurred to me was, as we study Buddhism, we read through all of these, and he's discussing it, and we discussed it in these recent videos in the Lankavatara, that there's a return to basic teachings. But the thing that's often missing, and maybe you'll agree with me, maybe this will be new information for you, my whole preoccupation in these videos and these discussions is to demystify these teachings, because I think a lot of times, most times, when students of Buddhism read these sutras and so on and so forth, that they take them as read, that we read these stories and we read all of these expedient means, and we know intellectually that they're lessons about how the mind works. But we still get wrapped up in the story, and we have the biggest trouble we have is getting to the essential core, the meaning of what this is all about, what all these stories are pointing to. We get wrapped up in the stories, right? And it occurred to me that the Nidana is one of those. The Nidana is a process of movement from potential to manifestation. There it is again, right? And the eyes roll a little bit. Energy, matter, energy in different forms becoming this solid stuff that we touch and move around, you know? It seems so impossible to imagine. But then I struck on something yesterday, and so I made this document, and I don't know how useful it'll be, but maybe it just as a reminder. I have a little bit of pictorial information, and that moves on from, quiescent energy to through but I'm including the Nidana, page-turning karma, in the discussion where I haven't included it before, right? These sparks, as you've heard me talk about. Anyway, this document's a PDF. It's online. I think the link is called, I'll put up a picture. It's called Nidana in Mind. Okay? Because the point I wanted to make with this document, so please go download that for your reference, is simply this, that we know the mind isn't an organ in the body, right? We know it's not a physical thing. We know the brain's a physical thing, but the mind, not so much, right? We experience the mind. And what I wanted to try to get you to picture in your mind is this process of the Nidana from these minor perturbances or not even sparks yet. This potential attracting others, and then this fast development into thingness, mass, name and form, and then consciousnesses, all that whole, often, and even Evola talks about it as a descent of sorts from, but I don't like the word descent because it sounds negative. It's really the spawning of the universe, our bodies, everything that we experience. And I wanted to get you to think of the Nidana, because I talk about it in great, grand terms of the entire universe is this process, yes? But every single thought you're having in your mind right now, every single experience, every single collection of data from your consciousnesses, eyes, ears, touch, feeling, taste, smell, all of it, is precisely the Nidana. See, I don't think I've ever heard that in my entire decades of practice, that the process in our minds is identical, and this follows from Shakyamuni's teachings. This was an aha moment for me, okay? The process of thought, of the I want to say congealing, the coming together of all of these various inputs into our minds that precipitates or spawns a cognition, a perception. Before you even have any idea that it's happening, quickly takes a form as a thought that you can then experience. And as soon as you've experienced that thought, it's gone. You may still be thinking about that thought, but that's a new thought moment, right? Building on the previous one until you're thinking of something else. So, wow, think about that. That process going on in your mind, moment to moment, right now, is absolutely the same, of the same nature, of the same construct, of the same ideas, of the same energies that the entire universe has been going through for billions of years. Your mind is identical to the universe itself. I know that may seem a step too far, but seriously, I've always said Buddhism is about the mind. And so now if you reread or reinterpret, rethink about all of this scholarship that you've read, that you've been researching or reading, and you think of it in terms of how the mind works, actually is working right now, right? That the land we're in is the Buddha land, that there's no different place, that it's just a shift of perception. Yeah, that becomes much more plausible if you stop thinking about it as a thing and more as a process going on right now in your mind. However you picture or conceive of your mind, what is mind? It is exactly that. Thoughts arise, abide, and disappear, dissolve. It's a moment-to-moment thing, the mind, isn't it? The way we perceive, the way we use this apparatus of the body, the eyes, the ears, the stuff. To perceive, to exist, to inhabit, to course within the phenomenal world. Yeah, you may have already thought this way. If so, let me know in the comments how you come to this. But I think it's of absolute significance, core significance, that we all understand as we're practicing Buddhism, when we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, using our mandala to reflect upon this process, that is what we're enlivening. That is what we are placing ourselves firmly in, that experience of the mind. Not experience of body, not a denial of body. Don't go there. Because this body, the body universe, as I often say, this same as this body, fingers and hands and so forth, is all the apparatus, the necessitative, there's a good word, the necessary apparatus for that mind to emerge, to be conscious, to experience, to witness. But that wisdom, that witness, is not bound by the rules of the physical. That witness is the process of all phenomena itself. So no wonder this is a mirror, as Nichiren calls it, yeah? Because it's already there. We already have it, this mind. We don't need to weigh that mind down with the brain's cataloging of stuff. That's useful for coursing this world. But our mind doesn't have to be stuck there. Our mind is actually much, much more grand in its potential vision, experience, witnessing. Yeah? Okay. And with that introduction, let's get back into the Lankavatara. We left off with Shakyamuni trying desperately to get through to Mahamati this very idea that enlightenment is an experience in the mind, not a set of tests and words and circumstance and education vis-a-vis schooling, learning. You know, that's all very edifying, but edifying is a word that describes a support for ego. And at some point, one has to see beyond that construct of self and ego. Not get rid of it as a bad thing, but get rid of the attachment, the identification to it. Right? You're still here, I'm still here. But our Buddha mind isn't restricted by, held by this body, this I, this self. The Buddha mind, although completely aware of this, is just as aware of everything else. The process that is generative of all the I's and selves and identities and everything. That's a release from the baggage of this data collector we call me, I, self, right? So Mahamati now asks, well, you say, again, that true knowledge is gained independent of any object supporting it, right? The mind isn't just emergent of a body, you or me, the mind actually, yes, is emergent from the apparatus of body, but the body is universal. It's not just the local ego. The mind, the awareness, though it owes its generation from a body, it isn't, what's the word I want to use when you, moored like a ship. It's not moored to this body. Does that make sense? The mind is, as I said, through the example of the Nidana, the universe itself. I know. So, but this is what the Mahamadi is repeating it without understanding it, that knowledge is gained independent of any object supporting it. And whatever statements one makes about it are no more than thought construction, and that as this thought construction is not to be seized as real, the seizing act of the seizer itself ceases. And when there is thus no seizing, another word for grasping, clinging, yeah, knowledge which is known as discrimination no more evolves. Okay, so should I dissect that a little bit better maybe? So the idea is, instead of seeing a mind as a little cloud over your brain, understand that that cloud, though it's emergent of this whole apparatus and the brain, the data collector, that the mind isn't dependent, doesn't have to be dependent on the collections of that database warehouse brain. Right? That the warehouse, once the mind perceives that it isn't owing to the limitations of that warehouse, no matter how big the warehouse, that the mind actually perceives the universe and beyond, that it isn't restricted by that warehouse, then that the idea, that in-betweenness between the brain and the mind, that keeps them firmly attached, so that the mind, everything the mind thinks, considers, experiences, is somehow attached to, restricted by, moored to the warehouse, then everything that the mind conceives of is restricted to simply what the warehouse is capable of holding. So then the mind, because it's free of the warehouse but doesn't know it, constructs, just endlessly builds things from that warehouse. This makes so much sense. Think about it. How many times do you find yourself explaining experiences to yourself with previous experiences? With, oh, this is like that time oh, this is just like that thing I saw. Oh, man, I remember hearing about this, but I never thought I'd experience it. Right? Every thought we have seems to be built, constructed of stuff in the warehouse. This is how we're stuck in samsara. You see? So by instantiating the freedom of the mind, by cutting it free up, we don't get rid of the warehouse. We just say to the mind, listen, there's a whole lot more than this warehouse going on. Take a look at the warehouse of the universe. Take a look at the process of potential that hasn't been warehoused yet. Take a look at how this whole thing is going on. Poof. Do you see visually how there's a separation, a letting go, not an annihilation? Don't get rid of the warehouse. We need it to just course through this world. But now your thoughts are freed from the tendrils of database. And now you can see everything happening in process. Sure, you can appreciate the vast database you've amassed, but that's just a tiny part of life, of this massive, ongoing, moment-to-moment process. Wow. Unleashing the mind. Literally. Right? What a grand portal that is. It's almost like, yeah, the sky is beautiful, blue clouds and everything. But then when when the sky recedes, we see all time. We don't appreciate that shift. But truly, we see trillions of years into the past when the sky recedes at night, yeah? Think of the mind like that. So this is what he's saying. Now, how is this knowledge attainable or unattainable? Is it unobtainable because of our not recognizing the generality and individuality of things, their pluralities, their unities? Yeah, Mahamati's still stuck, right? Can we not experience this liberation of mind because we're too busy qualifying thingness, building the warehouse? Or is it unobtainable because such ideas as individuality, generality, multiplicity, and self-nature overpower one another? Saying the same thing over again. Or is it unobtainable because of the obstructions presented by a wall, a mountain, an earthwork, a rampart, or by earth, wind, fire, or water, or because of remoteness or nearness? He's still seeing everything, even the mind, in physical terms. Is it because we can't get over a certain mountain of what? Teaching, understanding? Where does this shift happen? Come on, Mahamati. It's a shift in the mind, the way you experience the process of life. It's not something you're going to find in a deep hole in Central Africa. It's not like that. It's not a discovery you're going to make in books. It is a discovery you're going to make in mind. But to him, the mind is still something called Mahamati. Right? Or does the knowledge fail to obtain its object of cognition? There's the problem spelled out. Because of the imperfection of the sense organs due to youth, age, or blindness. Is it that my vision isn't 20/20? My ears don't work as clearly as they should? My senses betraying me? Well, yeah, if all of your mind is focused on your senses and that's the database in the warehouse, then you yourself are keeping yourself imprisoned in samsara. That's what everybody does, Mahamati. They don't perceive of a different experience of reality, untethered to that warehouse of data. It's scary to let go of that identity, ego. If, emancipated one, knowledge was not obtainable because of our not recognizing individuality, generality, unity, and plurality, then such cannot be transcendental knowledge. That's an odd leap. It is to be called ignorance. For in spite of the fact that objects to be known are before us, we do not know them. Again, if knowledge is unobtainable because such ideas as individuality, generality, multiplicity, and the self-nature overpower one another, such is ignorance. Yeah, if all you do is travel the hallways or the aisles of the warehouse looking at all the stuff on the shelves, you're never going to be able to perceive what's outside the warehouse, right? Emancipated one. It is not transcendental knowledge. Why does he keep saying that? He's kind of answering his own question. By going down every single aisle and itemizing everything in the database in the warehouse, that doesn't get you out of the warehouse. You're right, that's not transcend warehousal. Where there is something to be known, knowledge evolves. Where there is nothing, none evolves. Knowledge is possible only where there is a correspondence with that which is known. Okay, we're on the cusp here, because that freed mind, as I said before, doesn't get rid of any of the databases. But it is known, it is experienced from a completely different perspective, yeah? The items in the warehouse are no longer one of. When one is untethered from the warehouses, one starts to perceive how the warehouses are made rather than what's in them. This is the great release, the great difference of Buddha-ness and samsara. In samsara, everything is about itemization. In Buddha-ness, everything is about the instantiation of the necessity for the drama of the process that instantiates rather than the instantiations. Again, if knowledge is unobtainable because of the obstruction presented by a wall, mountain, earthwork, rampart, or earth, water, fire, so on, or due to farness or nearness, or on account of the imperfection of the sense organs, as in the case of an infant, the aged, the blind, such as unattainable is not transcendental knowledge, it is ignorance. For the object to be known is there, but the knowing faculty is lacking. He's still trying to materialize Buddhahood. What he doesn't get yet in this Lankavatara is that the Buddhahood has been there all along, that the energies of formation have predated the universe, that the universe is a product of potentials, endlessly, yes? But he still wants to perceive this Buddhahood as something to be achieved within the confines of the physical world. He hasn't made that full transition yet. So the emancipated one, Shakyamuni, responds. Mahamadi, such knowledge as is unobtainable is not ignorance. Such is transcendental knowledge, Mahamadi. It is not ignorance. You may be ignorant of it, but itself, the mind, is not ignorant. It is not because of the deeper sense that I say this, but when we know that there is knowledge gained independent of any supporting object, whatever statements we make about it are no more than thought constructions. That transcendental knowledge is unobtainable is due to the recognition that there is nothing in the world but what is seen of the mind, and that these external objects to which being and non-being are predicated, are non-existent. The language here is confusing. Let's go back to my example. The warehouse is filled with your discriminations and identifying the differences in everything. Yeah? But when you leave the warehouse still exists, but our perception of the warehouse and its contents isn't about the discriminations of the different items in the warehouse. The way we experience the warehouse and all of its stuff is as a moment-to-moment manifestation of a process that instantiated, moment to moment, all of this variety of stuff. We cease to identify with this, that, other, and we instead experience the process that identifies. That's the very nature of the emancipation. That is the emancipation. We don't annihilate what was instantiated and continues to instantiate, but we see it, right? When a mother sees a child try to run under a table and doesn't perceive that its forehead is above its eyes, and it runs headlong, boom, into a table, falls on its butt and cries. We've all seen it, right? As a parent, you feel it. But as an adult, your competing thought is, I understand how that happens. I understand how a child, led by its sense organ of I, doesn't yet perceive its body outside of that I. And so it sees clearly under the dining table, and therefore it heads right under the dining table without respecting the fact that it has 4 inches of forehead above that's going to strike the edge of the table, because that's not in its line of sight. As an adult, we know that's what's happening, but we still feel it viscerally when we watch, oh no, bam, oh gosh, right? There's the transition right there. And that's in samsara. You can't argue it isn't. But our mind isn't naturally, in its nature, adhered to samsara. We do that. We adhere that mind to samsara. That's interesting thought as a Buddhist, because that means that as we chant and awaken our minds, what we're really doing is getting out of the way. Because Buddhahood has always been there. The mind has always been able to, had the capacity to understand, see the bigger picture. It is our egos that continuously brings it down to our database. Because that's where we're functioning. We're trying to survive another day. Everything's about survival within stuff, things. Yeah. And this is what Shakyamuni is trying to get people to understand, is that suffering is of your own making. You are stuck in a loop. But your mind isn't stuck there. You're holding it there. You must release it, emancipate it, liberate it. When you can do that, when you love something, let it go. Yeah, we have all kinds of pretty words for this kind of a releasing of possession. But man, we have a hard time understanding. As this knowledge, this experience really, is unobtainable, there is no evolving of knowing, and as thus the triple emancipation is realized. If you just study more, you'll realize it. There is unobtainable experience, which is transcendental. In other words, you have to get to this by insight, by your mind, using your mind to understand the mind's potential. And it's not in all of the study, but it is in the study where you might get that disconnection, get that insight, get that inspiration that says, I can let this go. Not lose it, just stop clinging to it, seizing it, as he now is changed his translation, yes? But logicians, being under the habit energy of the wrong reasoning, which has been carried on since beginningless time as to the existence and non-existence, are unable to know all this, and while not knowing it, they are concerned with, right, such notions as external objects, substances, forms, indications, existence, and non-existence, and yet they declare that the cessation of discrimination is the state of mind only. But that's not. The discriminations are the mind also. Annihilation of discriminations isn't the point. It's re-experiencing all of that from the standpoint of how it comes about. And go on discriminating knowing and known. Knowing and known. See, they're still identifying a knower. That's the ego. And because of their discriminating knowing and known, they think of things as existent and non-existent, and declaring that transcendental knowledge is unobtainable. Can't get out of this. This is reality. Abide in nihilism. Of course they do. Because to them, to transcend that warehouse, you have to explode the warehouse. Get rid of it. Then you can be free. No. You've just attached yourself to something else. If experience, transcendental knowledge, fails to see an objective world which lies before it, such is ignorance and not knowledge. This teaching belongs to the logicians, or philosophers, as he was saying earlier. If transcendental knowledge fails to see, through various obstructions far and near, its own unique object that does not present itself as an object, such is to be called wrong knowledge. Because if your enlightenment doesn't understand that I have a new pair of shoes, then how can that be knowledge? Talk about ego. If transcendental knowledge fails to know on account of defective senses, such as infancy, old age, and blindness, its own object which is present, such is to be called wrong knowledge. Again, If all you're doing is inventorying the warehouse of what you think you know, you're not reaching beyond the warehouse. You're not understanding that you're capable naturally of so much more. Don't blow up the warehouse. Just walk out the damn door. Look out a window, please. See the bigger picture. All right. I think I'm going to stop there. We're starting a new part now. Further, Mahamata, the ignorant and simple-minded, keep on dancing and leaping, fascinated with their wrong reasonings, falsehoods, and self-discriminations, and are unable to understand the truth of self-realization and its discourse in words, clinging to the external world, which is seen of mind itself. They cling to the study of the discourses, which are a means, and do not know properly how to ascertain the truth of self-realization, which is the truth unspoiled by the fourfold proposition. So I started the next section, but I think it kind of neatly surmises what we've been talking about and what I've been trying to extract from this dialogue. So I hope that was food for your thoughts and consideration, right? Consider how your mind is experiencing the process of your life, not the collections of stubbing your toe, breaking your arm, relationships, dogs, Lego sets, school, all of the warehouse dramas, but try to get away from it far enough where you can see the dance of your life and then look for that overall sense of the play. Because I guarantee if you have any success in visualizing that, you'll begin to see your warehouse, your life, amongst many others. You'll stop identifying it as solipsistic, as you and yours. And you'll start to see how it combines with endless others. There you're on your path of letting that specificity go in favor of a much larger, more pervasive understanding. And if you do that, please go chant. It will revolutionize your mind, your samsaric mind, yes? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe. If you can, join our patrons on Patreon or just directly through PayPal. Help support this channel. I keep trying to improve it with equipment and so forth. It may not look it, but yeah, it's a constant work behind the scenes. And your support means everything to growing this Sangha, to reaching and spreading this teaching further. Not my teaching, Nichiren's doctrine, Shakyamuni's teaching of the Lotus Sutra, how to transcend our suffering attachment mentality and have everything we want and enjoy everything that is occurring constantly. Even the stuff that in our samsara like or particularly enjoy becomes just another facet of living this life fully. Yeah. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next one. I promise I'll be there. It'd be kind of funny if I weren't. All right. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your health. Keep your practice strong. Bye-bye for now.